Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show. We are very excited about today's guest. Today, we will be having Steve Burk from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He is fairly new to the laundromat industry, just opened his first store, a complete rebuild, just a few months ago. But he has some great insights into the right way to get into our industry, why he chose the laundromat industry, and his advice for what to do and what not to do when starting in this industry.
Yeah, let me tell you guys, our industry talks a lot about doing things wrong and getting into the industry the wrong way, and rightfully so, because there's a lot of that happens and you want to avoid those pitfalls. But what I don't feel like we talk enough about is, okay, well, if this way is wrong, then what's the right way? Because it's not always just the opposite, right? It's sometimes we need to do this, the opposite, and then plus X, Y, and Z. And Steve walks us through in this episode how, full disclosure, I've been his coach. I've walked him through the entire process of building this new project, and we talked through how the coaching benefited him and helped him, and why it was worth the money, but also how we found him a Rockstar equipment distributor. We found him a great location. And then he also very transparently shares with us in this episode some mistakes he made. Even though he had a good coach and he had a great distributor and he had a great location, everything still wasn't perfect. And he is so transparent and authentic in this episode. So we are excited to bring this to you. We think you're going to get a lot of value out of it. If you don't have a notepad, grab one, because you're going to want to take notes. Steve really brings a lot of gems to this episode. So let's jump right into it. We'll see you on the other side. So Steve Burk, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thank you, guys. How you been?
Yeah, we are fantastic, man, and I appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. As we mentioned in the intro to the show, you are, full disclosure, Steve is a coaching client of mine, and we want to bring Steve on the show because he spent the last year and a half, something like that, building a laundromat in. You'll probably correct me, but I'm going to call it Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, because it's all the same area to me. And I shared a few of the pictures of your store online on social media and stuff like that. So some of my followers on social media might have seen some of the pictures, and during this episode we'll scroll through some of those and B-roll and things like that too. But you know, as we told you offline, Steve, the reason we wanted to have you on the show, although you've only been open for 3 or 4 months, is because I think you are a shining example of what the future of our industry is and how people that are not in the industry and don't have that level of knowledge and experience can do things the right way and get into the industry the right way. So this isn't our episode. This is your episode. We're hoping to extrapolate and pull out all the things that you did right. And I'm sure there was some things behind the scenes that, you know, you started to go down this rabbit hole and then you pulled yourself back. And as you know, because you're a fan of the show, as you know, the goal for every episode is just to bring the industry more value to help the next Steve Burk be more successful and avoid a lot of the landmines that you've been able to avoid. As we also just mentioned offline, I've been working with coaching clients for 4 or 5 years now, and there are not too many of them out there that go through what you went through, which is building a brand new laundromat in a white box commercial space that's never been a laundromat before, and pretty much avoids every pitfall. There's some small ones. Well, there's always a little bit of luck involved in everything, right? But it's a lot more skill and a lot more work and diligence, and you know, you're clearly very type A and, you know, organized, and I just loved everything about the experience with you. I consider you a friend. I hope you consider me a friend. But we just want to use your story to bring value to the industry. Good. Yes. Anyways, Carla feels like she knows you because I talk about you all the time. I don't share anything proprietary with even her. None of the details or anything, but she hears about most of my coaching clients. And most of what she heard about you is really good. So don't worry.
It's been great. I get so excited to talk to you.
You officially have my permission to say anything you want to Carla about. I can care less.
Thank you. All right. Well, listen, we want to jump into your story because we have limited time here. Do us a favor. You know the show. You know how this goes. take us back to your childhood. And for those of you that don't know, I don't think I mentioned it yet, but Steve is a retired police officer. So first of all, thank you very much for your service. You have the utmost respect from me and Carla for what you all do for our communities. But after you retired as a police officer, then you obviously decided to have a second career. As if your first career wasn't tough enough, you decided to build and open a laundromat. So we'll see how that goes, and I'm sure you have all kinds of parallels for us. But tell us about what it was like being Steve Burk as a little kid.
It was good. I mean, I had the typical, American upbringing. I lived, unfortunately, my parents divorced when I was young, but everywhere I went, it seemed that I ended up with a good base of friends. I had parents that cared, whether it was before the divorce or after, it doesn't really matter, but bounced back and forth. It was Illinois, California, and then I ended up in Colorado. So actually my childhood was the typical American, nothing traumatic or, anything like that, but no, good times.
Yeah. Fantastic. Did you grow up in the Pittsburgh area, or did you grow up somewhere else? I don't think we ever talked about this.
No, I was born and raised just outside of Chicago.
Okay. We did talk about that. I lived
there and then in Southern California back and forth because my mom ended up moving to California. So, and when I left Illinois at the age of 18, I moved to California, stayed there for 4 or 5 years and ended up moving to Colorado. I spent 30 years of my life in Colorado, and that's where my law enforcement career was.
Gotcha.
So, I started out with an agency that sits just on top of Colorado Springs, right next to the Air Force Academy. That I expected would be my little stone agency to someplace else. And I ended up falling in love with the community, and I stayed there for 27 years. So rose through the ranks, ended up a commander. So I was second in charge of the agency, and I basically had done everything I could do. As you know, that was back in 2019, and things were getting a little interesting in the world with law enforcement. So the only other option I had was to become the chief. That was the only next step. And since the chief had no intention of leaving, it was time for me to go. So my wife and I talked about it, and where do we want to go? Let's look for our next step. She can get a job anywhere. She has valuable skill sets, so she can get a job easily any place we move. But the opportunity to come to Pittsburgh came up, and that's where she's originally from. There's a community actually on the other side of Pittsburgh from where we are. So this was like coming home to her, and she jumped all over the chance to come back. So, and it's good. I like it here. She's thrilled to be back. So it was a good move.
Yeah.
So did you retire in Colorado, or did you transfer to Pittsburgh and retire there? You retired in Colorado?
Yeah. Okay. Not only did I retire there, but I mentioned to my wife that I might consider, once I, got established and had, a set pattern and more time, maybe becoming a reserve officer or part-time officer out here. And she said, "No, you're not."
I was just getting ready to ask you that, because I know it's common. It's super common. Retire from one state and then collect a pension and move to another state. And heck, some guys even start a whole new career in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I worked for an agency that had no pension program.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
So ended up just needing to do something else.
Sure.
So we moved out here, and my intent was to get into real estate. And I did a little while, flipped a house, did some wholesaling, which that was interesting in and of itself, because I didn't even know that even existed.
That's a crazy world.
Wasn't what I thought it would be. I didn't care for it at all.
Yeah.
So you thought laundromats. No. How'd you get to laundromats then?
So we've all heard of, well, not all, but Bigger Pockets.
Yep.
So I was part of their, pro membership. And I found that to be a very valuable resource.
Oh, yeah.
A bunch of good people on there who soak up a lot of information, but not kind of getting towards the end of where I was transitioning. What am I going to do with it? Because it's not what I thought it was going to be. I was on their site looking for something to, research or study, something to do with, Burr or whatever. And I saw the business section, and I never saw that before. So I clicked on it. It was a very small amount of information. But there was this interview on there with some weird dude about how he ended up accidentally buying a laundromat.
I don't think I knew that's how you found me.
That's how it all started.
That's funny.
Interesting. I had no idea. Bigger Pockets is a Rockstar organization, no doubt about it.
Oh, they are.
So did he sell you on it? You listened to the interview and you're like, laundromats.
I even told my wife, I said, it is weird how attracted to this industry I am after just this one podcast I listened to. It was very strange. That doesn't happen very often, where you can get that enthralled with something. But man, I was like, So So I just did a little bit more research and a little bit more research. And I was kind of hooked right at the beginning.
Okay, let me stop you right there. What is a little bit more research? Where did you go next? Because we really want to dive into the entire process all the way until you opened your store. What was a little more research? Just start Googling it, or where'd you go?
Yeah, I did very little of that because so much of the stuff that I found when you do that, it's all proprietary to the Maytag or Hitch or Speed Cleaner. Somebody's, if they're giving you their information, which is a sales pitch.
Yep.
So I looked for more of the things like your podcast, or I think that's when I found Jordan Berry. I started listening to some of that. And the more I listened to it, it was very quick that I realized I want to try this. And I was surprised when I mentioned it to my wife. Would you be interested in owning a laundry? I barely got the words out of my mouth. That would be great.
Really? Wow. That's not common. That's not common. There's nothing better than free. Ever heard that before? Well, it's not true. You know what your laundromat customers like even better than free? It's fast. That's right. They want to save time more than they want to save money in most cases. They want to get in and out of your laundromat as fast as possible, and they'll pay more for that experience. We're proof of that here in Cincinnati. That's why we added HM Company drain troughs into our newest store in Cincinnati. While they may never know why, your customers will love that your washers all drain better and faster than with old school drain pipes. As if that wasn't enough, every HM drain trough is made in the USA, so they ship in only a few weeks, and everyone is custom made just for you and your project. If you want to provide your customers with a top of the industry experience in your store, then contact your distributor to order your HM Company drain trough today, or visit draintroughs.com.
Her version of what she thought I meant in that split second was different from what I meant, because very quickly I didn't have much of an interest in an unattended laundromat.
Yep.
I see the value, and I'm not going to say I won't in the future. But my intent was I was very intrigued by the entire picture of an attended laundromat with drop-off service and a pickup and delivery business as part of it.
That's also not common. Why is that? Typically people, and you know these, but I'm just sharing with the audience, we always don't like to make assumptions here. So typically people are enamored with laundromats because they can be run unattended or passively, as they always say, or that's typically what attracts people to it, at least in the beginning. And then a lot of times they figure out there's a different way to run a laundromat. You were attracted to a more complex side of the industry that isn't even as well known. I mean, I'm sure I talked about it in my interview. Maybe that was part of it too, but what was that? That's not common.
You did talk about it in the interview, and I don't know that I can give you an intelligent answer as to why I like the attended versus the unattended. I think it was just a business model. My whole career, I mean, even in law enforcement, and I spent more than half of my career in a supervisory position. And even when I wasn't, I was a training officer. And it was constant with me is this isn't just law enforcement. This is a customer service business. Your customers may not like you, which is the case a lot, but it's still a customer service business.
Yep.
So my whole life, I've had jobs, except for one that I can think of, that I faced the public. So I think that was just kind of part of who I was as far as, operationally speaking, as Steve likes to deal with people.
Did you get in, and I'm jumping back a hair, but did you get into police work because, the old cliche, protect and serve, which isn't a cliche, by the way, I'm not minimizing that, but is that what attracted you to police work?
And it's okay to say cliche because, to be honest with you, I mean, it's something said over and over and over.
I think it's 100% accurate. I just didn't want to minimize it.
No, it's not. You wouldn't. No. Partially.
Okay.
So there's always the two sides to that, at least from my perspective, after many years of dealing with many officers and hiring and whatnot. But you don't get into that business. You don't get into a business like law enforcement where people are going to love you or hate you at the end of the day.
Right.
Without having a passion for that industry. You have to have a passion to want to do it. And if part of your passion isn't helping fellow man, you're in the wrong business. It's like, I don't want an EMT firefighter coming to help me if I get hurt. It doesn't want to help me. It's just looking to collect a paycheck. You have to have that passion. But let's be realistic. You also get into the business because you know how much fun it can be at times.
Sure.
So it's an exciting job, 9 hours and 55 minutes of pure boredom and 5 minutes of sheer terror in a hour. So it's always two sides of the coin.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so bringing it back to laundromats, you were attracted to what we call the full service laundry center. You were attracted to that model. What did that look like to you? Was it just, once again, the picture that I laid out in the interview? I mean, I know you started Jordan has quite a bit of content out there nowadays, especially, probably not as much a year ago.
I would venture to guess most of my information came from Jordan's stuff, because that was, I think at the time, because you guys weren't hard and heavy into this at the time.
Correct.
And I think I found, who's the other one? There's another one that's much shorter.
Was it maybe Planet Laundry podcast?
That was it.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's the CLA's podcast, Planet Laundry Magazine. They only typically release them every month, and they don't always, I don't think, even release them every month. But it's been around for years. But it's been around for years, so they probably had quite an archive that you could have went through too. So that's probably where you got most of it. Yeah, because I mean, we've been coaching you for over 12 months now. And so when I started coaching you, we didn't have a podcast.
Right.
We launched it somewhere during that relationship.
So did you look into books and resources like that, magazines and books from like the CLA?
Some. So I don't know, Dave, if you remember the first email I sent you, because that's in that interview that you did with Jordan at the end. Of course, you gave your email, right?
Yep.
And I sent you an email saying, "Hey, I saw your interview on the podcast. I'm very intrigued. Do you have any recommendations?" And I was shocked that you very quickly replied back to me and said, "Hey, Steve, good for you. Hope you're excited. Whatever. Here, try out these things." And I remember telling my wife, I said, "Look at this email. Look how much detail this guy put in the email. He doesn't even know me. I just send him this email."
Yeah.
Well, because Dave likes to talk even in print too. So,
True story. True story.
So I looked at it and you gave me all these things. So like a week later, I replied back to you saying, "Dave, I did this.
You did. I do remember that.
And,
yep.
Yeah.
And I was like, seriously? Good for you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So mostly it was the standard stuff, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Just reading the big different resources online, the magazines, joining the CLA, going through some of the papers that they have on their site, basic stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So you did some research. You decided laundromats are definitely your thing. Your wife was even in on it, which is better than what he had.
I
so
had
what
to
was
drag
the
my
next
wife
step?
along for a solid 5 years.
Of course, he drugged me into a really scary
That's
laundry
because
too.
100%. We weren't near as
Well, what?
We weren't near as prepared as you were, Steve. Nope. No one will argue that.
Well, she wasn't willing to go along because you kept spending money on businesses that were losing money.
That's 100% accurate. I still have a habit of doing that.
Yes.
That's all right.
Sorry, I'll let
So
you win.
anyway, after your research, what was your next step? At what point did you hire Dave? Did you start looking at locations? Did you find a distributor? Like what order did you do things after the research and you decided you were definitely in?
Right when I started this interest of laundromats, I had talked to you already, Dave. I ended up finding a house and I bought a house to flip. And actually it was going to be a rental, but I ended up flipping it. So I had to press pause on laundromat stuff. And that took me a while. But once I came off of it, my wife and I had discussed it and we said, yeah, let's move forward with this. So I had already talked to you. I don't think I had hired you as a coach yet. After maybe just the first phone call, but I had ended up placing a call to a local distributor that I got his contact info from, and I talked to him prior to that flip, and then I pressed pause, and then when I sold that house, I called him up and I said, "Hey, I'm back in the market. I'm looking. I'll let you know if I find something, or you let me know." And that was I sent him the text, and he called me. And he said, "Hey, would you be, how far are you willing to drive?" I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, would you be interested in, or would you be willing to drive to Allison Park for a location, which is a community just north of Pittsburgh?" And I said, "Well, yeah, because I live in Allison Park." And it went from there. He actually had a space, the one that I have now, that he had been working with a different customer to put a store in, and they had the whole thing drawn up, the equipment list, the plans, everything in a package. And right at the last minute, the guy said, "Nah," and he moved on to some other venture. He didn't do it. So that's when I had contacted you and said, "Dave, let's start the ball rolling," I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So it just, everything was already put in place for me as far as the location. As you remember, we had to do a lot of changing of the plans that they had for the spot.
Yeah.
So because the floor plan that was originally laid out was not beneficial, would not have helped anybody.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it's important for people to understand. I always talk about finding a Rockstar distributor as, 1A and 1B. And they can lead you to projects like this. But that doesn't mean that the way a project is laid out is ever ready made, because we kind of had to pick that apart for a little while, right? Obviously.
No, it wasn't pick it apart. It was throw it away and start over.
Okay, well, I'm trying to be nice. But yeah, it was a process. But and I'm not saying they had other things wrong, but one of the big things they got right was it was in a good location. It was right next door to, is it a Dollar Tree? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I'm attached to a Dollar Tree, yeah.
Yeah. Which is, for those of you that don't know, if you can be at or near a dollar store of any kind, you're both playing in the same ballpark. So that was great too. So what was that process like as you went through a ready-made package, and we together through our coaching program kind of dissected it and pulled out the good and the bad, and I'll keep stating this because I think it's very important, is that you kept challenging me. You were like, okay, well, you don't like this floor plan. Why don't you like this floor? Like, you wanted to know the whys. And I think that is incredibly important if you're new to any venture in life, really. Even as a parent, don't just do what your parents tell you to do when it comes to raising your kid. You should be able to ask the whys, because then you get that knowledge and experience. Do you remember? I know it's been a year ago now, but do you remember the nuts and bolts of as we kind of picked that apart? Because quite frankly, you were doing way more of the work than I was. I was just confirming or denying.
Yeah. And I want to back up for a second. To be fair, because I really like my distributor, that floor plan wasn't his idea. It was the other customer who had drawn it up.
Right.
So
I do remember that. Yep.
The distributor gave me the package. I, of course, sent all the information to you. I looked at it. I didn't have much of a question, I don't think, about the equipment package, because it just made sense. And it especially made sense because of the store, the location itself, which, as you know, it had been a real estate office, but they had, before I ever got there, they gutted almost all of it. Wires hanging from the ceiling, lines everywhere. The drop-down ceiling was removed. The only thing that was remaining was one, I don't know why they left it, was one section of small offices running down one side of the store, which is the only stuff in that store that I kept.
The good and bad about having a blank slate is you have a blank slate. So
right.
you with other than the physical, dimensions of the space, you can do what you want to do. But the bad news is you got to do it all. You got to pay for every electric wire and every piece of copper plumbing and everything else, the drain troughs and the whole 9 yards. So walk us through that process. What was that like for you? And how, once again, I'm going to keep stating it because you were doing the work. I was just verifying. We were confirming, which is a big part of why you are successful. It's not because of us and our coaching. It's because you approach things the right way. And yes, we were there to help guide you along and confirm things.
So when we got to space, you and I had our discussions, back and forth with information. I asked you a lot of questions, either on the phone or shooting you text. I felt bad for a while, the amount of text I was shooting you. But it was just start here and go there. I said earlier, I got lucky, and I did get lucky. I got a distributor who, the one thing that I would give him above anything else was I don't even know how old he is, late 50s, early 60s. And he's got a mind where he doesn't just accept that's just what it is. If something comes up, he tilts his head and he thinks about it. And then the next day I get a phone call saying, I was thinking about what you were saying. And what if we try this? It may not be the normal method of doing something. He's an outside the box thinker. So I got lucky there. So, okay, in my opinion, I got lucky hiring you, building that relationship, because it's past just I'm hiring you relationship, right?
Sure.
So I got lucky there. And I also got lucky with the contractor. because I think I'm his 9th or 10th laundromat. So good guy, very knowledgeable. He's been a electrician and a certified electrician and plumber for over 40 years. So his knowledge base was insane.
And to push pause for a second, you found him through the distributor, correct? Okay.
Correct.
So I want to call attention to that because me and Carla talk about this all the time. There are misnomers out there about coaches, not just us, but coaches in the industry, and that we either are not needed at all, not valuable because the distributor knows and can do everything, or that we are trying to cut out a distributor, which is crazy because I can't even sell you equipment if I want to. Like, that's I don't understand that for anything. I see it as a symbiotic relationship, but I will give your distributor credit because, at least to my knowledge, he was never threatened by the fact that you had a coach. A lot of equipment distributors.
Exactly the other way around.
A lot of good. That's exactly
amazing. The way he even said, he goes, man, this guy you're talking to, he's giving you some good advice. And I mean, multiple times throughout that build,
good for him.
He would stop and he'd go, Steve, because I've done a lot of these, you made some really smart decisions along the way.
So I didn't want that to come across as me. I wanted to point out that good for him. He wasn't threatened by me. He saw it as an addition to the team. He saw it as valuable. And yet I love that he was always, when something would come up, and I don't know if it was something I said or something you read or, just an idea you had, because you come up with these ideas, right? We know that. And you're like, what if this? I just want to call attention to how amazing a quality that is in a distributor for them to have that experience, but also that humility, that open-mindedness to say, hey, I've been doing this 30 years, but maybe there's a better way today. And I don't want to bypass that. I think that's what made us working together as a unit, even though I've never met him, really powerful for you.
Well, and I think too, he was impressive in that he obviously wasn't just selling you equipment. Like, he was going through the whole process with you. He was using his resources to help you find this awesome contractor. He was helping you obviously locate a space immediately. So he really was, as Dave calls it, a Rockstar distributor.
Let's give this distributor credit. Who is this distributor?
It's Jeff Altman with Pittsburgh Laundry Systems.
Pittsburgh Laundry Systems. And he is a local Hipsch equipment distributor in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Does he serve other markets around Pittsburgh, like other parts of
Ohio, West Virginia, Virginia?
Okay.
They moved around to other states as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Gotcha.
So the owner of the business is Sonny. I think Sonny's owned the business, I want to say, for 40 years or so.
Okay.
So they've been around.
Guys, I talk about it all the time. I know HM Company is amazing here in Cincinnati, and they are, but do not believe for one second that they're the only amazing equipment distributor out there. You can talk to HM Company, and they will tell you they are not the only amazing equipment distributor out there. There are plenty of them, but they are all not that way. You need to find ones who behave in the way that Steve and I are describing. Because what's the value? I don't even think we can quantify the value associated with taking someone new to the industry who, you probably actually did have a few connections to contractors and stuff because of your real estate work, but let's assume they didn't. He put you in contact with someone that had not only a good reputation in the contracting world, but industry specific experience in our industry, laying out plumbing, laying out bulkheads and things like that. Do you feel like that made the process smoother for you?
It would have been impossible for it to not have. The first time I met the contractor, I was like, I don't know if I like this guy. Because he was, older guy, quiet, grumpy. My impression of him couldn't have been farther from the truth.
Really?
It's weird how you can come off one way, but you're not. So
what a great lesson.
Yeah, he was just, the first day he showed up, and it wasn't the first time he had been in the space, obviously, because he had already given a bid. He was there to look at it again to refresh his memory, to see what he needed to change, what he needed to come up with on the bid. But no, he ended up being fantastic on almost everything. I would use him again in a heartbeat.
Fantastic. All right. I know our audience is chomping at the bit for you to describe your store. So can you describe very roughly the layout that was there, because it was a former eye doctor? Is that right?
Real estate
real
office.
estate.
Real estate office.
Berkshire Hathaway Realty.
Okay, that's right. Before that, so I remember it being broken up. The offices were the restrooms were on this side. And at one point you were like, well, we're going to leave the restrooms there because the plumbing's there. And remember,
Right.
I was like, no, we're not. They should be there. They need to be over here. Well, that's going to add a bunch of money, but it'll be worth it. And we go through these whole process, walk people through visually, and we'll include some pictures in the B-roll if you're watching this on YouTube. But walk people through visually. What equipment did you end up putting in there? I mean, what numbers of machines, and try to visually lay things out for people of what it looked like before and what we moved and why we moved it and things like that.
So I think I said that we're attached to the Dollar Tree. It's just Dollar Tree's the only other occupant in that building. So it's a rectangle. I got the 1/5 on the end, 3,000 square feet space for me, and only about 2,000 of it on the floor for customers. The rest of it is, taking up the dryer space and the service area, and then bathrooms and my space. It's rectangular in shape, about 45 wide and 70 something long, I think. And luckily for me, those offices or the walls that I mentioned earlier that didn't get taken down run along as you come into the store down the left side of the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So it was perfect that it was offices anyways, that I would end up using those for individual offices. Like originally it was, one office for the attendant area to be, for the drop off. And then we're going to have one office for stores and another small office for literally an office, and then the restrooms. And then the big open section. And the original plan for the space was they had these, I don't even know what to call it, but bulkhead sets where there was there's supposed to be some washers here back to back and then some diagonal over there back to back. It was very strange.
It was the weirdest layout I've ever seen.
It was a very strange layout. So what we ended up doing was just scrapping that and just going with a shotgun approach straight down the center of the store. Mm-hmm. So I have 44 total machines, 22 washers, 22 dryers. The bulkhead for the washers, of course, runs down the center. Towards the front of the store, I have two 80s. They're facing the front when you first walk in. And then the bulkhead just runs behind them. Both sides of the bulkhead are the exact same thing. So it goes to 60s, then 40s, and 20s. I have very wide aisles between the walls and the machines, probably 12 feet or 12 to 15 feet in spots. It's pretty wide.
And how is that, not to distract you from the conversation about the equipment, how has that worked out for you? Because you're now open for 3 or 4 months. Was that a waste of space?
No, not at all.
Have you found it to be useful? Have your customers found it to be useful?
They love it.
Yeah.
They love it. So now, I mean, not to toot a horn or anything, but it's definitely the majority and the vast majority of customers when they come in. So I have a goal. And that's a customer service goal, is nobody comes into my store without being talked to, period. Even if that simple thing is, hi, because I'm busy. Mm-hmm. I refuse to let somebody come into my store without them being spoken to.
Good
I think twice I've had somebody come in and out that I didn't get to speak to. It pissed me off because I failed myself. That's my goal. So all the people come in, and I can't tell you how many times, trust me, I do not have the grand poobah Taj Mahal of laundromat. It's just a nice space, right? So I've seen pictures of other stores online that are far prettier than mine. But when they walk through the door, I get, wow, all the time.
That's what you're looking for.
It is exactly. And I even laugh and I say, that's what I like to hear. And then they laugh and then the conversation starts, right? Mm-hmm. So part of it, I think, is the fact that we chose not to put the drop ceilings back in. Part of it, the main driver there was I wanted the open concept. Now the contractor then followed it up with good, because you know how expensive that would be. Put the drop ceiling back. And it would be interesting to see over time what that relationship would be between the cost of the drop ceiling and the savings in HVAC. Because that's a lot of extra space to heat and cool. The wintertime, that heat is sitting up top. Fans, you have to install fans to bring it down, et cetera. But yeah, it's a very big open space. And then you'd think I would know these dimensions off the top of my head. From the end of the washer bay to the dryers, and all the dryers run across the back wall, so they all face the front. But again, they're probably 55, 60 feet from the front doors. You have to come in. And the distance between the very end of the bulkhead and the front of the wash or the dryers is probably 22 feet or more. And that's where I have 8 folding tables set up in, 2 4-table rectangles. And you can easily walk people, carts, standing, folding. There's never people bumping into each other, ever. When there's not many people in there, it sure seems like a lot of space.
Mm-hmm.
But when there are a lot of people in there, it just seems comfortable.
And I'm sure you remember our many conversations, because I beat it like a dead horse about throughput and how you can actually get away with less equipment in the right space if you design the right throughput, and you allow people to easily transfer from, let's call it the washer department to the dryer department to folding without interfering with each other. And a lot of times the reason I say your store is amazing is for many reasons, but one of them is when you build a brand new store from the ground up, and you can put stuff wherever you want it, you can put stuff wherever you want it. And so as long as you have enough space and you lay out, you make a priority the aisles and the, I call it the elbow room, the excuse me, pardon me on a Sunday afternoon when it gets busy. If you start there and then reverse engineer how much equipment can I put in the store, you can actually get away with less equipment. And I know just a lot of distributors and a lot of manufacturers don't want to hear that, but that's actually the future of our industry. And so if you want to build what I call a modernized laundromat, that's literally what Steve has done.
To leave myself an out, though, the dryers go across the back wall. Mm-hmm. And then I have 2 75-pound dryers. So we made an L along the back wall. So the 2 75s are actually up against the next wall, the long run wall.
Right.
But that was first because we needed the space.
Mm-hmm.
But second,
ran out of room.
If I got to the point where I needed more machines in the store, I could just build along that line.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it would be very easy to add on to that spot. Yes, it takes away from customer space, but that's a decision that's made at another time based on facts and circumstances that I'm faced with at that point. But no, so far the mix has been good.
Good.
What about seating? Is the seating all towards the front of the store? Is it kind of dispersed throughout?
It actually is all towards the front. And funny enough, somebody mentioned that, Carla, the other day about, I wish there was some seating in the back. Mm-hmm. And I sat and I thought about it. I'm like, I had never, ever given that one moment's thought.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes people want to stay close to their clothes. So like if they're in the dryer in the back, they might want to be near there.
Yep.
Yeah,
Typically,
I never thought of that. And there's very little I can do to change the way it's
That's
set
right.
up now. If I put seating back there, they would feel like
cramped.
The people who got put in a restaurant in that's right in the middle of everything, that's what they'd be looking like.
Yep. And while 3,000, a lot of people listen to this are like 3,000 square foot. Holy cow, that's a huge store. The reality is, nothing is ever perfect. And so not having seating, not having folding space isn't an option. But especially in a 3,000 square foot store, if it were a 12,000 square foot store in Texas or something like that, and all your seating was in the front, I mean, people would have to walk for a quarter mile to get the seating. But in a 3,000 square foot store, that's not as big of a priority. But what we made a priority of that space was, the dryer layouts and the sizes that we wanted in there, the correct equipment mix, and the priority that we wanted the folding tables close to the dryers. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, there's a few things that are probably never perfect in any store, but because of the size of the store, I think it works pretty well. Okay, so describe for our viewers now the I call it the drop off room, but that side of the store and why you built that room and that area the way you did. Once again, you had the vision of a full service laundry center in a 3,000 square foot space. So a lot of people thinking you have 3,000 square foot space and only 2,000 of it is your retail laundromat. That's 1,000 wasted space, 1,000 square foot.
Yeah, I already don't have enough room. No, I'm serious. And I think we were barely even open. I'm like, dang it, I don't have enough room here. Mm-hmm. I should, but it is what it is, right?
We've said that about our 9,000 square foot store.
We literally have already said that. Yeah, it's crazy.
I don't think it would be hard to say I've got too much space, right?
Yep.
But no, so that wall that I talked about that was existing, I did lose some of that space because if you remember in the beginning, the original theory was to have one restroom, and it was going to be a unisex bathroom. And I almost said chiropractor, my architect put a kibosh on that because he said you're just barely over the square footage limit that's going to require you to have bathrooms.
The code. Yeah.
So it is what it is. That one it was just put it there, put it right next to the first one, move on. I'm done.
Yep.
I'm not going to, why spend the time and heartache worrying about it? It's lost square footage. It is what it is. So that whole section, as I had said, was individual offices, which I thought was going to benefit me. Funny how we change our own minds later, but I thought, well, I'm going to remove one wall and I'll have a larger open space so that the drop-off space, which was originally going to be just about a 10 by 10 space, could connect to another one that was about 10 by 15 or so. And I thought, well, now I've got this other wall over here that I'm going to use as an office or storage space. What's the point of having that wall? So now I just have one big linear space that's only 10 feet wide, but it runs down the store. The thing that stops it is the restrooms. I even went to the point where my mop closet, as we call it, is probably one of the smallest mop closets in the industry, in the world. But it is, I mean, you got to turn sideways to walk past the sink, right? So it's originally, that was supposed to be a closet. And it's between the outside wall and the bathrooms. So I would have this literally like 3 foot wide, I think it was, closet with a door that would lead to the laundromat main area. And the wall at the other end of it would have been the wall to the office. So my contractor made a comment. He goes, "Do you even want to put that wall up?" He said, "Why don't you just leave it open?" And I thought, no, I like the wall there. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, wait a minute. If somebody's in, so I remember what I used to do for them. If somebody's inside of that drop-off area and they've got the door closed and the window's open, or the door's open, it doesn't matter, and something goes wrong. They got the wrong customer, robbery, whatever it is, they're stuck. So I told the contractor, leave the wall out, because now you can just run down the length, out the back, and then literally out the back door of the building when you're gone. So it went from the space that I was supposed to have 1 bathroom and 4 individual offices to 2 bathrooms and a shotgun approach. So if it's working.
So that space is it? I'm probably way off. Is it 14 deep by 22, something like that? Is that what it ended up being?
It's only 10 feet.
10 feet
deep, yeah.
Okay.
And it's you're probably not far off on the length of 22 feet.
Yeah. Okay. And you're glad you did that. You're glad it's one big open room, which I remember us discussing.
I can't even imagine why I would have wanted it the other way now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would have made no sense.
So you run a drop-off service. You've obviously only been open, 3 or 4 months, something like that at this point, and you're already struggling with the amount of room that you have in that space. There's probably a lot of people listening going, huh? So how is that? How did it lay out, and why is it? I mean, it's never enough room. I always say the same thing about square footage as I do about parking and laundry carts. How many should I have? You can't have too many.
Right. How much space do you have to put in is the question.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. My space issue is not for the volume of drop-off. That's not the issue. Because my drop-off business has not grown to that point yet.
Right.
My issue is I see in the future coming, the problem is going to be.
Yep.
So as I get to the point where I can start hiring employees, because if you remember in the very beginning, I had no intention. I didn't want to hire employees. I want to do this myself so that I completely understand this industry.
Yep.
I want to live the long hours, the long shifts, deal with running the store by myself. First of all, I need to start developing a revenue stream that I can count on that's going to be for these employees, right?
Yep.
But I also want to know what I'm talking about. So when I do hire employees and they come to me with something, either I can say, well, no, because, or that's a great idea. Why didn't I think of that, right? And if I don't have that experience, I won't be as effective at making those decisions in the future. So where I'm looking at needing more space is if it's just me there, I'm fine. How much space do I really need? What I'm missing right now, the only thing I'm missing is a space for me to process drop off as I'm, let's say, going through it's out of the dryer, I'm folding it, I'm packaging it. I don't like to do that out on the floor where the customers are. because I don't want them to think I'm taking space away from them. I'm actually going to build a table, because I'll build a countertop that I'll put on a long piano hinge of some kind that will fold up against the wall when I'm using it. And when I need it, I'll unhook it and drop it down, and I'll do like 5x5 or something. Yep. Because it'll take up a lot of my open space. So by making it to where it'll hinge out of the way, I only lose the space when I'm using the space. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So what I'll need to focus on for the future is storage space. Once I get pickup and delivery going. I can't believe drop off would create enough that I wouldn't be able to store that.
Well, but you're thinking pickup and delivery too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Have you added that yet?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm actually just getting ready to turn DoorDash on with 2 cents and see if that has any traction at all. My store's not in the city, so it's not that city living used to that type of thing. But I think in the world we live in, there's enough people that are used to it. Plus, I'm going to subsidize the fee. So what's the worst that can happen is nobody uses it.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we didn't miss anything, and if we did, make sure you address it, Steve. So now let's move to the products and services. You mentioned Hipsh equipment. You just touched on Sense for your POS and turning on that DoorDash feature. Walk us through what are if you're comfortable sharing this, by the way, what prices are you charging for drop off and for your machines, and what's your pricing strategy there as far as launching, and what your price are you running introductory prices, or what's your strategy behind that, and what should other owners be considering why you did what you did?
I think I'm a little unique from what other people have experiences in the simple fact that I don't necessarily have a competitor close to me. The closest. I
love how you said that.
Okay.
Because you do have stores near you, right?
Well, yeah, but even the closest store to me is 3 miles away.
Yeah.
It's an unattended store in the basement and behind the shop. So there's no competition as far as comparison store to store. It's because I'm lucky enough that I have a nice new store, right? I'm not any better than he. But when I went into the pricing, it wasn't like I had to have this huge introductory sale. We're not going to do, come in and I'll give you the world for free. That wasn't the issue. So what we've done is the drop-off service is simple, $1.50 a pound. I think it's not an uncommon number, probably towards the lower end of the range for what people are charging across the country, but that's what we are. It's $1.50 a pound, bedding items, of course, by the piece. For the machines, I have 20s, 40s, 60s, and 80s, and currently they're priced at $3, $6, $9, and $12. I do think it's funny when people walk in the door and they walk up to the machine and they're like, $12. And then I open up the door and they go, holy cow, and they see how big it is. And then they understand. They go, you can do a lot for $12. Yeah, you can. So the 20s and 40s were originally going to be $4 and $7. But for the introductory pricing, I wanted to be able to put something up. So we made them $3 and $6. And the dryers I got basically, I got 30s, 45s, and 75s. And my 30s are 20 minutes for $1. The 45s are 16 minutes for $1, and then the big ones are 8 minutes for $1. And I did make the decision to go with dollar coins, which we hadn't talked about yet, I don't think. But I thought about it back and forth, and just the nightmare here about people trying to find quarters, people coming in and just dropping $100 in your machine and walking out with the quarters. I didn't want to deal with it. I found a bank that could get me a steady supply of dollar coins. They couldn't understand why I was even having a problem getting them. So I have the original factory 25-cent slot for people that bring their quarters, and there are a lot that still do. But then we have the dollar coin slot as well. So I added the slot.
Are you cash only, or do you have a card option too? Are you hybrid or just cash?
Today we are cash only. By the end of next month, I'll have the card readers out of the machine.
Nice.
And those are from Sense as well?
From Sense, yeah.
Okay. There was, extra wash and extra rinse. What are you charging for those, since you're being so open about your pricing? And what was your strategy?
Strategy. So not to sound simplistic, but when you move to a dollar system, everything's priced in dollar increments. You have a choice.
Yep.
0, 1, 2, 3. I mean, it's not rocket science.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided the 20s and 40s, the extra wash or rinse is $1 a piece. And for the 60s and 80s, it's $2 a piece. I
think a lot of people in the industry would be shocked that you consider those introductory prices. Mm-hmm. Has it been prohibitive? I mean, you're in middle America, right? You're in the suburbs of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the steel city of the world, right? Mm-hmm. Have those costs been prohibitive to you?
As in the customers not liking them? Mm-hmm. No. I don't care if it was free, somebody would come in and complain that they had to do it, right? Mm-hmm. There's always going to be some people that will complain. So I've had a couple people come in. Most people just don't seem to have a problem with it. I do pay attention, and people are getting a kick out of a sign that says you're getting $1 off. It's going to have to end at some point, because I'm not going to keep that up there forever. But at the moment, I'm enjoying seeing the faces when they realize, hey, I'm getting a deal. And if that deal makes them come back and develop a habit of using my store, it's well worth the money right now.
How do your prices compare to your competitor 3 miles away?
Funny enough, my 20s are less than him. And I think I'm somewhere close to the 40s. He doesn't have any 80s, and I think he has 160, which is somewhere around there. Because my equipment is newer, it functions much better. Mm-hmm. So I've heard that continuously from people. Yes, they're amazed by the system that we have set up. We haven't talked about it yet, but I went with the SanOWash as well. To see the looks on people's faces when they see how fast the jars will dry their clothes, it's pretty funny. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the SanOWash Ozone system. For those of you who don't know, that's what he's referring to, is his Ozone system. Was that a good move for you? Because that's a substantial investment, right? I mean, on top of an already substantial investment. I know, we never really debated whether it was worth it to you, but we did debate whether it was in your budget and whether it needed to wait a year or two. And obviously you didn't hold back and you put it in. Have you seen that to be the market differentiator that we've seen it to be in our stores?
The end stories is it was one of the best moves from my perspective, which is all of my vast years of experience in this industry. I've operated exactly that many stores until today. I don't have anything to go off of what's it like to run a store without. Right? All my experiences with one. But I can tell you what my customers are saying. And I have many people talk about how it gets them cleaner, their clothes cleaner than they would have thought. Mm-hmm. Quite a few of them talk about how their clothes are softer. But the kicker is a couple guys that have been coming in that are like repeats. I'm like, my shoes, my shirts, I mean, they're brighter. The colors are brighter. And they're actually seeing that the colors on their clothing are brighter.
Yeah, fantastic. Well,
so
awesome.
What's next for you, Steve? How many more laundromats? Are you going to have an empire?
60 more.
Yeah. Originally, my goal was like 3 or 4. Mm-hmm. So to be honest with you, I don't know. I just need to get through this one. I already know where I want my next one to be. I even know the building that I want. Whether it would still be there, who knows? Whether I can even afford it, because who knows? First
of all, thank you, and thank your wife, because she's actually manning the store right now for you, or with you, I should say. And we appreciate her doing that so that you could share your story on here. So I'm going to put you on the spot if that's okay. So I'm curious now where you are now, not that I'm aware you haven't arrived. You're just always so humble, but where you are now, what are 2 things you've done so much right? What are 2 things that you did wrong, and how could somebody learn from what you did? And they could be small. They probably are small because you pretty much avoided all the big stuff. Finding a great distributor, hiring a coach, being very diligent and organized yourself. I mean, that's the secret sauce to 95% of it right there.
My biggest OS moment was I am not one sometimes to move quickly. You're not going to force me into doing something if I don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. The good way to get me to walk away from something is tell me I have to make a decision right now.
Try to pressure you.
I'm not ready. I'm out the door. Because I've been burned by making those decisions in the past. That perfect sales technique. That price is good for today only. Let's buy it, right? So I'm moving slowly. So in
trying not to rush the landlord and not to rush the landlord's realtor or not to be pushy and get that stigma. Oh, Steve's calling me again. I let things drag on for a long time. And I think the process from when I first saw the space that I leased to the day that we signed the lease was like 6 months. Might have been 5 months. It was a long time. I mean, I know there's a couple of points where the landlord had emailed the realtor saying, "Has this guy made up his mind yet?" But it's like every time I turned around, there was one more contractor or trade that was slowing me down. Right? It's like, well, I needed this plumbing answer, I needed this HVAC thing, but for some reason HVAC people out here wouldn't give me an answer if I didn't talk to an engineer first. I'm like, you've been doing this for 20 years, give me an idea. So it was I just allowed things to drag on too long. And it was just by luck that the space didn't get rented to somebody else, because you certainly didn't owe me anything. So I suppose the next time it would be go in faster once. And I understand why I did it, because this was all very new to me and I was scared to death.
Yep.
The other mistake, which I'll take it, I mean, that's the new guy syndrome. I didn't know to look. And I don't want to bash on anybody. I don't like doing that. But my trough system it's terrible. The bulkhead is great. I like the bulkhead, but the system was built where it's 3 8-foot troughs connected,
and this isn't, to clarify, this is an all-in-one system. Like you get the bulkhead, plumbing, electric, drain trough, all in one system from one company.
Yep, and I love it. I love the bulkhead. I love the setup. The contractor saying this is fantastic. Obviously, he likes it. It's easy for him. Everything about it is great. I even went for the wider trough, because the bulkhead is 36 inches wide. But the issue is the framework is built and it's engineered so that the cross members along the length of the bulkhead rise in height, so that the trough is held on them at an angle. The problem is the drop is barely 1/8 of an inch per foot, in some spots less than others. So because I didn't know what I was looking for and I didn't know to pay attention, that wasn't necessarily built correct. So the next store that I do, I will not use that type of system. I love the bulkhead. I'd still buy the same bulkhead, but I wouldn't have it framed out the same way, and I would put the trough in ground instead of on. Because that way you can get more of a drop rate for it.
And just so everybody watching at home, he said there's 1/8 of an inch per foot. That should be 1/8 of an inch per 6 inches. So while it does have slope, and I have seen many troughs sat flat on a floor with no slope, and you talk about a nightmare, 1/8 of an inch is not enough. And he's attested to that.
Yeah, when I take the lids off the trough, there's standing water in them. There should not be standing
There should
water.
not be ever be standing water in your drain trough. That's correct. Yep. But what are a couple things that you
best decisions you've made?
Thank you.
Well, the number one I hate to do, because it gives you credit, Dave, and I don't want to do that.
Don't do that. Pick something else.
Don't inflate his ego.
Pick something else.
Another question?
Just pick another one. You did so much right.
Let's be realistic. The number one, the best decision, and this wouldn't be the best decision for everybody. We're talking about what was the best decision for Steve, was contacting you and starting my relationship with you. Because although it was odd how quickly I became very passionate about this industry. It was very strange. And that actually helped me understand this is the right path, right? If you're this interested in this, something's up, right? So contacting you, developing that relationship and getting the coaching and having somebody that I could turn to. And I've texted, I've messaged, I've emailed other owners before. Got information. But having somebody there that it wasn't just a friendship, but it was also a business relationship where each of us had our responsibility, right? So having somebody that I knew would give me the answer that was right for me, not that was right for everybody or for him. And that was important. So I needed somebody to help walk me through it, because there was plenty of times you said, well, I wouldn't do it this way, but you should do it this way, and here's why.
That's right.
There was other times where you would say, full disclosure, I have the better product, but I don't think you need it. Like when I was stressing out about not having 200 G machines. And my distributors saying, you don't really need them.
Yep.
And when I talk to you about, I'm not going to have the best thing on the market, you're like, you don't need it. Here's why. And we talked about it.
All right. So that was one. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. That is not why we had Steve on the show, by the way. But with bonus points to you for doing that. We're even better friends now. No. So what's another one?
What's have to pay for dinner next time?
That's right. I got dinner thanks to Steve. Good job. Way to go. So what's one other thing? Because I know we've kept you a long time, and I appreciate you being so patient with us.
Sure. At the moment, I'm not letting go of the big picture. The big picture was everything that I did was focused on what is going to be the response from the customer perspective.
What great advice.
Yeah, the color of the store, the layout, thanks to you. Where is the drop off located? Which like most people do, it's towards the front when people walk in, because originally it was supposed to be a little far down the line. I said, why should they walk that far? Let's move it to here.
Yep. Customer experience.
Keeping certain spaces open, the decision of what I did with the flooring. It's just from beginning to end. And it's constantly reaffirmed by the customers of, wow, you guys did a great job here.
Thank you so much. The last thing I want to ask you is, and we can edit this out if you want, but how can our audience get a hold of you? Are you on Facebook, social media? If people want to connect with you in the way that you connected with me through Bigger Pockets, how can they reach you?
Yep, we're on Facebook. It's the Laundry Bin PA, because funny enough, there's a laundry bin in Ohio.
Oh, okay.
So they can do that, or my email is thelaundrybin@outlook.com.
Listen, man, thank you, my friend. I can't wait till we talk next time. But thank you for carving time out of your morning to share your experience with the industry. I know you are the type of person that absolutely looks to always give back and always looks to serve, and that's what's going to make you successful. So,
thanks.
Thank you so much for the time.
So far.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Everyone back home, thanks for joining us on another episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show. We will see you guys next time. Take care.